Hello, I'm Bable Jonathan, and this is the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television, live from our headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. In our top stories in this edition of the news, some political leaders in the crisis-hit northwest and southwest regions of the Republic of Cameroon say peace should be the right step to reconstruction and not the reverse, and that mines should be reconstructed before the reconstruction of infrastructures. In the meantime, the minister delegate at the Ministry of Economy, Planning and Regional Development, leader of the reconstruction project in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, Paul Tasson, continues urging the people to accept the reconstruction plan of the President of the Republic, Paul Biya, which he says is or has as main objective to fast-track the return to peace and normalcy in the two regions. And the Confederation of African Football, CAF, cancels and postpones some major continental competitions as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. Those were top stories. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us in this edition of the news on Equinoxe Television, live from Douala, Cameroon. We begin this newscast in the crisis-hit northwest and southwest regions of the Republic of Cameroon. The minister delegate at the Ministry of Economy, Planning and Regional Development, Paul Tasson, leader of the Northwest-Southwest Reconstruction Project of the President of the Republic, Paul Biya, continues urging the people of those two regions to accept the reconstruction, emphasizing on the point that the main objective of that project is to fast-track the return to peace and normalcy. But what do the people think about the reconstruction project? Our correspondent in the Northwest region, Bustela, put this question to some politicians and civil society leaders in Bamenda and compiled this report.
This is what is left of this compound burned in 2019 in Alachu, a neighborhood in Mankon. It was not the only property burnt in that area. The victims had been promised government support. A commission was created by the regional governor to evaluate the damages, and until June 2020, they are still waiting. The very cause of their misery is still ongoing, but government is now bent on reconstructing and developing the region. Women are one of the softest targets in the conflict. Salim Boumien, Northwest Regional Coordinator of the Southwest Women Task Force, says women's voices should be considered.
Women and children are the most affected, and it would have been good for women to be in the hall. But we realize the people sitting there with the minister and talking, the women are not there. Who then is articulating their issues? Now, the peace process is needed because we will not live in conflict forever, and reconstruction is as an integral part is something that targets the population has been affected directly, because it revitalizes the economy, rehabilitates the structures, and brings back the people, and life returns to normalcy.
Reconstruction and development is set to start, but the war is not slowing down yet. This June, at least 2 corpses have been deposited on some roads by gunmen, while 3 days out of Mr. Paul Tasson's 5-day stay in Bamenda was marked by a lockdown. This and more raises uncertainty over the reconstruction and development process.
Reconstruction cannot be a step towards peace. It should be peace. That should be a step towards reconstruction. That's the way I look at it. It should be reversed, because when there is peace, there can be reconstruction. Not that you reconstruct and then peace will come. You reconstruct in what atmosphere? When violence is going on, when the fighting is going on, when nobody has trust in his brother, in his neighbor. I see that there is a lot of lapses which the government has because they didn't do serious consultation. They didn't do a neat assessment. And that's one of the things which were put in there before the national coordinator, that there is a serious need assessment that is supposed to have been done with the people directly in the field, or those that are involved, so that when this plan is coming out, we should be able to work out smoothly. About 30% of the persons who should have been seated in this session should have been young persons, so that they can have their worries tabled, they can have their proposals as to the way forward tabled, and we see how this can go.
But the national coordinator insists the presidential plan is a way forward.
The plan is not an end in itself. The plan is a means to the end. That end, that ultimate end being the return to peace, or if you want, sustainable peace.
According to recent information, the conflict in Anglophone Cameroon has internally displaced 679,393 persons, forcing 412,405 as refugees in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The presidential plan is also expected to reconstruct and develop the minds of the battered population.
The leader of the presidential plan for the reconstruction of the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon, Minister Delegate at the Ministry of Economy, Planning and Regional Development, Paul Tassong, and his collaborator, former mayor of Kumbunjang, Donatus, are now in the southwest region. After a week in the northwest region, they are in the southwest region, meeting with administrative, political, civil society, religious and traditional authorities and other stakeholders, convincing the people to accept the reconstruction plan to facilitate the creation of an enabling environment for the reconstruction to go on. Some of them are indicating that there are some things that should be done before the reconstruction can go on smoothly to avoid a catastrophic situation. Mbela Moki Charles, member of Cameroon's Upper House of Parliament, says that minds should be reconstructed first before the reconstruction of infrastructures. He spoke to Derek Jato, who equally interviewed other persons, other stakeholders, and put together this report.
The various divisions are taking turns. Tuesday, June 30th, the day started with Faku Division delegation. It is a deliberation session with the national coordinator and his reconstruction team. And Senator Mbela Moki Charles made known his opinion and advice.
But let me also be frank to say that we need human capital development. That which has to do with the reconstruction of the mind of the affected people. Without that, we may be inviting problems later on. The fact is that many of us have been hit very hard in the northwest and southwest regions. The focus should be to translate a transformed, reconstructed mind and a developed mind to contain whatever is in the plan.
Talks were frank and the outcome was satisfactory.
For FACO, we're generally quite satisfied. Nothing peculiar because we were there yesterday and all the construction and redevelopment which have been proposed.
I think it's a good gesture that the recovery is done based on divisions.
I think if you saw me, I nodded my head severally. I kept on nodding my head because at one point I said to myself, we want the people of Muyuka, because we sat as one. Prior to this meeting, I was just a spokesperson for the Muyuka people. We sat and came up with this idea, these proposals, of which the cassava plant is one of it.
Then came Kupe Maningoba Division, pointing out how the reconstruction plan should be implemented in the said division.
It's my imagination that to travel from Kumba up to Bakere, there is no peace. No peace, no electricity.
Chakwe Jean-Marie, the senior divisional officer for Kupe Maningoba Division, headed the delegation.
We organize the leading forces of our division to accompany this process. So we are very happy, and then we are ready to move.
Day 2 ended with the BLM delegation.
Let's bring indigenous points like management back to BLM and see how it goes. How does it work? We have about 5 security windows.
It is difficult nearly everywhere in the various divisions of the Southwest region, and revelations from all the delegations had one similar point, acknowledging the presence of the separatist fighters and how to go about and realize the reconstruction plan largely depend on the communication to make even those who are having contrary views to change their mind.
Manfi in the Manyu Division, Southwest region of the Republic of Cameroon has a new mayor after the one elected in February 2020 was killed. 32-year-old Taben Chong Robertson Ashu was voted overwhelmingly by all the 20 councillors of the municipality. Earlier today, the election took place in the council chamber amid tight security and threats reportedly from separatist leaders. And Mayor Taben Chong Robertson Ashu hails from Eshobi village of the former mayor. And the ghost took over the town of Kumba today, so to speak. Streets in many parts of the town were deserted today, while some pupils managed to move from different parts of the town to the examination center to take part in the common entrance examination. Meanwhile, at the center in Mabanda, teachers who came to invigilate did not have access, and at government primary school Double 16 pupils didn't sit for the examination because of the names. Their names were not on the list. The examination, however, unfolded history in that part of Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. Manjikan Gebre Hasmo.
It was a ghosted Tuesday in Kumba. A day pupils were expected to sit in for the common entrance examination. Notwithstanding the quiet streets of K-Town, pupils dressed in assorted outfits answered present to sit in for their examination. Due to the overcrowded nature of the primary school hosting these pupils, the divisional officer for Kumba 1, Ali Anubu, sent these parents away from the examination hall. In Douala, teachers who came to invigilate at one of the centers in Mabanda were stranded after they were left outside.
They convocated us to come and invigilate in the center. We have come. We left. We abandoned our project that we were supposed to follow up. Coming here to the center, they have rejected some of us that we are not supposed to invigilate. We don't know what is going on in these countries with teachers. The most painful one is that this is an English examination, but if you go deeply, the chief examiner is a francophone man. How can that be possible?
The teachers who were furious didn't immediately leave, as pupils were quietly seated in their halls taking on the examination. According to one of the head teachers at the Mabanda Center, teachers who were not taken will be given a pride of place in the first school living certificate.
When the chief of center saw the hierarchy, she explained that those people will be given priority in the first school living certificate. This is because sometimes they give more like this because of the weather conditions and the time to blame. I feel some people might not come, so they used to give more like that in order not to disrupt the exams. So it was not an intention maybe to humiliate or to frustrate any examiner.
At the government primary school in Dobo, which is an accommodation center, about 16 pupils didn't sit in for the exams.
They refused me to know right because I'm not having assistance leave, and as I have taken my money from the station, he said he has already started in the École Publique.
The head of the center blames the school for not following up to see that their kids were in the examination hall.
The remark I have about this examination is that we have increased number of absences in our center. Maybe due to the IDP who have left and gone back to their various stations. When we saw those students, some of them became very late. We went through the list. Their names were not featuring. We could not even find their numbers. So we don't know whether there's anything fidgeting, whether the head teacher ate the money or what happened. So I could not accommodate them, so I sent them out. This is a center, and the center covers so many schools. So I am working as the chief of center. So those students were not registered under my school. If I saw their names in the candidate list, I would have allowed them to write.
After missing out in their first and second paper without seeing their headmaster, these pupils from a lay private primary school located in Yato, in the outskirts of Douala, were later taken away from the examination center by their parents while hoping that they would sit for the first school living certificate.
In the report coming up next, we are taking you to one of the most enclaved parts of the Republic of Cameroon. Kamaki is a locality in the far north region of the country, and the over 3,000 inhabitants of the locality are suffering because of acute underdevelopment challenges. For me, I'm Sander.
To meet the people who have been living in misery for over 20 years, we are heading to Kamaki in the Equinoxe subdivision, Myodanite division of the far north region of the Republic of Cameroon. Driving, riding and trekking for over 100 kilometers, my colleague Amadou Dairo is tired, whereas the journey is still long.
C'est pas facile, hein? Nous sommes coupés du monde. Nous avons déjà parcouru plus de 100 km.
The divisional officer for Equinoxe subdivision and his état-major are forced to trek across this path, call it a bridge, across the Danai where there is no bridge. Once in Kamaki, the problems are tabled by villagers running from potable water, bad road, no electricity to inexistent medical facilities.
La voiture ne peut pas arriver ici chez nous parce que la route est tellement mauvaise.
Cars don't come to our village because the road is really bad. Sick people most at times die on the way to the hospital because the road is bad.
La mauvaise route de l'éloignement de l'hôpital.
And the government of Cameroon is aware that Kamaki is cut off from the rest of the world, according to the divisional officer for Equinoxe subdivision, Hassana Kasum. The road is really bad. Immediately it rains, the village is cut off from the rest of the world. The next major observation is where villagers fetch and drink water. Not only is the water as dirty as water from gutters, but animals drink and defecate in. Children in Kamaki fetch from here, even with the presence of rhinos, and this fact too is not hidden from the government of Cameroon, according to the divisional officer. Even though situated beside a lake, the locality has a serious water crisis. The village has never been connected to electric energy, and apart from that, Kamaki has no health facility. We live in misery here in Kamaki village. Without a health unit, we are far away from the Viri Health Center and the Bosco Integrated Health Center. Our situation is worse during the rainy season. We transport sick persons on motorbikes and sometimes they die on the way. The suffering and misery that attracted a development project financed by the Swiss government under the Ministry of the Economy, Planning and Regional Development. The 1 billion development project, according to the coordinator Hassana Patrice, will comprise the building of a solar energy plant, which will then be used to generate potable water for the local population.
Law enforcement officers in the Republic of Cameroon remain determined to crack down on indiscipline and enhance the respect of anti-COVID-19 measures in the country. On assignment on National Highway number 3, some of the law enforcement officers brought to book a military officer who was not putting on his face mask. Immaculate Fowe reports.
Law enforcement officers carrying out systematic checks along the Yaoundé-Douala stretch of road. The basic requirements each passenger is expected to present are a national identity card and a face mask.
This weekend we are on the field to make sure that road users wear their facial mask and that transporters avoid overloading their cars. At the same time, we are still fighting against the main causes of road accidents on our road axis, like the violation of speed limits, worn tires, and so on.
Following the escalation of coronavirus cases in Cameroon, wearing a face mask has been made obligatory. While inspecting an inter-urban transport bus, a military officer has been asked to step down from the bus for not wearing his face mask. According to passengers who boarded the same bus with him, the military personnel thought he was above the law.
Le cache-nez, c'est pour tout le monde, c'est pour tous les Camerounais, quel que soit ton grade.
Every Cameroonian is supposed to wear a face mask, no matter his grade. There are no exceptions.
Il n'y a pas d'exception. Non, mais ça, c'est normal. C'est normal. C'est normal, c'est que la gendarmerie fait ça, c'est très normal.
The message I am sending out is that the coronavirus is real. Everyone should wear a face mask. Life is precious. Let's preserve our lives.
Préservez vos vies. Parce que ceci, c'est très important.
His non-respect of barrier measures has been reported to his hierarchy. Severe sanctions will be served soonest.
Economic stakeholders in Cameroon are striving to enhance the participation of the private sector in the fight against health challenges on the African continent. Within the framework of the Africa Enterprise Health Program, they are targeting COVID-19, HIV, AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, diabetes, and high blood pressure. Meeting in a video conference today, some of the health and economic stakeholders examined patterns of action that can go a long way to improve healthcare delivery across the continent. In these and in the analysis of the situation in African nations, they highlighted the adverse impact of a poor or absence of healthcare services on labor force operations and the income of enterprises. And for greater details, here is an extract of what a public health and a public and community health expert told us. Take a listen.
The private sector must act in as far as health is concerned. That is why we are managing to come together with the public sector so that private sector must act to improve the health in Cameroon. It is a general problem and we want to act so that the business must involve in the health of the workers. This program is to give awareness so that the employees should be informed that if they are diagnosed earlier, yes, the complication can be avoided.
The virus pandemic compels the Confederation of African Football to postpone and cancel some major continental football competitions. CAF President Amat Amat announced earlier today that the 2021 African Nations Cup has been rescheduled for January 2022 and the 2020 African Nations Championship to January 2021. These are some decisions taken during a video conference CAF executive meeting earlier today, and concerning inter-club competitions, the CAF League of Champions and the Confederations Cup will resume in September 2020 in a Final Four format. Semi-finals will be played in a single match, and because of the difficult conditions of the 2020 Female African Nations Cup, it has been cancelled. And meantime, the CAF Female Champions League will be launched in 2021. The 42nd CAF General Assembly, has been postponed to 2020 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, while in conformity with the recommendations of the CAF Governance Committee, the elective General Assembly will take place March 12, 2021. The CAF 2020 Prize Award has been cancelled. CAF will disperse $16.2 million to support member associations to mitigate the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. Each association will receive $300,000 US. And that's it for the first part of this newscast. Talking Point is up next. We are receiving a journalist and negotiator, Taj Jarvis. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Babla Jonathan, for having me.
You have been on the ground despite the unstable socio-political and even dangerous security situation in Anglophone Cameroon, gathering facts across the two regions. What's your own view of the situation on the ground as of now?
I must tell you that it is a precarious situation. It's very difficult for those who are deeply affected, especially when you move down to Ekona, Moyuka, Yoke, Bombe Bakundu, Baliangi. The mothers, the women, the children are in fact, a deep humanitarian situation. The rainy season has come, and they are caught within the web of. They are not just between the two adversaries. They are now between three adversaries, between the non-state armed groups, the state armed groups, hunger, and now adding to the fourth, the rains that have come. So it's a difficult situation, and the stories you get on the field, Babla Jonathan, they are heartbreaking. I spoke with a lady in Muyuka who told me how she was shot, and the bullet took her and the baby. Fortunately, they both survived. And I listened to another stories where I interviewed someone who told me that 5 of them were arrested by the state actors, taken to the Muyuka check, and 4 were killed. He alone was released after series of talks and negotiation, and he explained how he managed to be alive. It was shocking, and those are the kind of stories you get. And you get stories where the non-state armed groups too comes and get those whom they presume are blackleg. I listened to a story of a man who told me how he was beaten and he was kidnapped because the daughter is going to University of Boya. So he was forced to pay a sum of 700,000. This is Muyuka, 700,000, and later he had to pay the balance of 1 million, which he did not have. So they had to kidnap him. At a point in time, he showed me instances, injured positions where he has been injured. It's a kind of difficult situation down there, Babla.
With regards to what you're saying now, what you've seen, what you've heard on the ground, which direction is the situation taken? Positive? Negative?
If I tell you that there is a positive direction, then I must be mistaken. Because if we must take a positive direction, it begins with the mind. And it begins with the action that we take. And it begins with the logistics we put in place. At this point in time, the foundation of where the structure needs to come and be is shaking. So you cannot come and build.
Where are we moving to? Are we moving to a catastrophic
situation? We are
moving
to a catastrophic situation. No, we are moving to a catastrophic situation, especially during this period of rainy season and a period where people get now. It's more of, remember, Babylon, within the early phase, it was between the government and the non-state actors. Now kidnappings of civilians started coming into place by civilians and non-state actors and state actors. Now there's that sellout between civilians. There's that conflict between civilians aligning to this, not aligning to this. So it is now a web of chaos in the conflict, and if care is not taken, adding to the poverty and the hardship that already exists in the rainy season, the common anglophone, the mother in those areas, the women especially and the elderly, they're in deep shit. Because as we speak right now, people constantly die on a daily basis. If I tell you the story I listened to on the number of people who die on a daily basis, there was a home I visited in Yoke where you see it has been deserted. There was like a skeleton on the bed, nobody was there, and you could not tell where these persons are. I just feel like if I talk further on this, I feel like crying. Gloomy. The pictures they're not worth telling. My view on this issue is that we are not moving to a positive side. Because if we are moving to a positive side, you will start seeing issues like talking about reconciling the people, talking about listening, talking about dialogue, talking about meeting the people to understand the necessity of engaging in peace building like civil and military cooperation. At this level, we need more of civil and military cooperation. You want to reconstruct, you need to start building the minds of people, you need to form collaboration with the people, you need to mitigate your war, and it's a whole game.
The leader of the reconstruction plan, Minister Paul Tasson, is urging the people to accept the reconstruction because, according to him, the main objective is to fast-track the return to peace and normalcy.
Fast-tracking of peace and normalcy as a negotiator stems from 3 things. 1, before these 3 things, we must understand, Babila, that in conflict, the reason why we have difficulties, we in Cameroon, we have focused more on the what than the how. We already know the what. Let's bypass this situation and come to the how. We have to negotiate. We have to solve it. These 3 things: 1, identity; 2, appreciation; and 3, affiliation. Because of the fact that there is that identity, the identity conflict is difficult to solve. Where this person I'm an anglophone, this person I'm an francophone. It brings ego because of appreciation, lack of appreciation to say, okay, you guys, the state actors have done this, the non-state actors have done this, let's go for a common ground. Because of that lack of appreciation, the situation moved into a more precarious situation. Now we come now to the affiliation. People tend to affiliate themselves like, I support this, I don't support this, and that affiliation actually is making the situation more worse than it is right now. So my view on this construction issue is that it should stem from more a bottom-top approach, not a top-bottom approach. If you look at those stakeholders involved or invited during this consultative talk, as I will call it, there are more of those who are within the city and those who are really affected. Now, what if these people say, okay, we want to reconstruct, but who are those we need to meet? Let's go to these communities. Let's get to those journalists, those people who are actually being on the field, to recount the story of those people. Let's understand what's the need and the necessity.
But those who are meeting with Minister Paul Tasson, John Donatus, and the others are leaders and the representatives of the people.
It depends on who you call representative of the people. It depends on who you call representative of the people. The power has shifted from the prominent to the normal person in North and Southwest region. Before, the powers used to be concentrated. Remember that when there's an uprising, when there's a revolt, power moves from the top to the bottom. That's why you need to start from the bottom to top. You need to start now from the bottom to top. Power, the train of power to be from the bottom to top left the station in 2017, September 2017. That's when the train left the station, and it's not going to come back anytime soon. So the administration needs to put that in mind, that the powers for those on North and Southwest region is from the bottom. So you have to go to the bottom to take to the top. And you should understand, getting to these stakeholders to talk about reconstruction is difficult. I understand the fact. But we should understand too that, Babila, we need reconstruction on the other side of the coin. But when I talk about we need reconstruction, what kind of reconstruction do we need if there are structures that need to be put in place? A buffer zone. Meaning that if you want to reconstruct, you go to a place like Moyuka, a place like all this affected area, carve out an area, build resettlement camps. First start with resettlement camps. Those who are in the bushes, the mothers, the women and the children, let them come into this resettlement camp and ensure that you don't attack the camp. That while you move to negotiation, when you build that resettlement camp, those buffer zones, it helps a lot in seeing the people understand that there is that need for peace. But when you say you want to build structures like homes, and it tells you that you are missing the issue here, you are missing the things here.
Tajavis, can reconstruction fast track the return to normalcy? Can reconstruction help us to move out of the troubled waters to normalcy?
It depends on the side you are. If you are talking from a politician, if you are a politician, you say yes, it can't. Which means that from a political perspective, you say yes. If you are talking from a position of someone who is a civil society advocate and a negotiator of myself, I will tell you the chances are slim, because it will not. You cannot have a problem with your wife, Babla Jonathan, a serious problem, you go and buy your wife a car expecting that will solve the issue. That is not going to solve the issue.
But there are some women who will be very happy and they forget about the problem.
They will not forget about the problem. They will take the car, and each time that car has a problem, they will still tell you, this husband is this husband is that, this husband is this husband is that. Hence, what you should do at this point in time, Babla, negotiation.
Some may even destroy the car.
Look at what happened in FARC. The FARC rebels from 1999 to 2012 had this issue, in Colombia, they had this issue of the armed conflict, and they had a lot of support from others win. But what happened was that during the fighting, they engaged with negotiation in Vietnam, in Cuba. They were discussing in Cuba with the government, even though they had sophisticated weapons, and there was no bilateral ceasefire called. I want people who are viewing us right now should not think that there must be ceasefire before dialogue kickstart. No. There cannot be ceasefire before dialogue can start. Dialogue can start before ceasefire. It is dialogue that will call for ceasefire. It is not ceasefire that calls for dialogue. So when you go on the table, you say, let's come. The first time, see.
But would the ceasefire not create an enabling environment for conducive dialogue?
Babila Jonathan, conducive dialogue can never take place on the battleground field. That's why any effective dialogue takes place out of the area of conflict. If you are married and you have a problem with your wife that's serious, if you have to negotiate, you will notice that sometimes you go to your wife's family and talk with the parents and they solve that problem. Or the wife and yourself move to your mother's, to your father's house, and they talk about the problem. Use the common example we have in a normal day-to-day society. That's how we resolve conflict. Conflicts are not resolved from a bigger political perspective. No, from a day-to-day interaction, we resolve conflict. So I want to tell you that from this aspect of this negotiation, what the government and the non-state actors need to understand, they cannot win the war. The FARC rebels understood this when Alphonse Casno understood that they cannot win the war, even with the mighty sophisticated weapons they have. They engage in dialogue because they look at the cause of the common man, the mother, the children, the women, all those who are dying. What stake are we? We claim from the Anglophone perspective that we want independence because we want to protect these people. From the French government perspective, they say they want decentralization because they need to protect the interests of these people. What is the lowest common multiple? What we call the LCM. The LCM is a common man. They have, that's where they share the same periphery. Now, if you say your LCM is a common man, how do you get the common man solve this? Reconstruction team should not focus on creating structures. They should focus on creating buffer zone, resettlement camps for those highly internally displaced to first come and settle down. That's where you start, you extend what we call an olive branch. When you create that area, you don't attack. But sadly enough, Babla Jonathan, we've seen that it is not the case. I was in Moya on weekend, and we've been in Moya for quite some time without gunshot, but that weekend I had series of gunshots in my quarter.
And that is why
the same thing. So,
and that is why some politicians, like a former member of parliament who spoke in the report compiled by Stella in Bamenda, said that peace should be the step that will lead to reconstruction, and not reconstruction leading to peace.
That's why I tell you, Babla, if you pick a coin, there is what we used to call in a local parlance that money and horn. In a local parlance, when you toss that coin, which side you are? If you're on this side, you don't see this side. So a politician will tell you, yeah, in reconstruction will do this, reconstruction. Yes, reconstruction has been ongoing in war-torn areas, like in Taliban, Afghanistan, and other areas. But how do they reconstruct? That should be the question. Where do they reconstruct? The reconstruction starts from resettlement camps, from those who are affected. Now, when you reconstruct resettlement camps, you protect this side. The most actors see that, hey, these people have good intention. They are protecting the same people we want to protect. Let us engage in meaningful dialogue.
All right. There have been calls coming from everywhere on the President of the Republic, the Prime Minister, the government of Cameroon to come to the same table and negotiate with separatist leaders. Negotiation. What are we talking about when we referring to negotiation between President Paul Biya and the separatist leaders?
Babla Jonathan, I want to tell you that we have a culture of negotiation in quote in Cameroon. Ego, where we put our ego in front and forget about the nego, which is you and me. Now this can happen. I think the government of Cameroon, I know that they always follow us and they have track of us, should understand they cannot win this war on the with boots on the ground. Now, the non-state actors should understand they don't have regional support. They don't have some kind of support from internal. Now they have external support within themselves. They should understand that they too cannot win the war. Who is winning this war? The common man is losing the war and is affected. The government of Cameroon must come together on a negotiation table. The first step is that if you cannot meet them where they are, you establish what we call a hotline. A hotline meaning that you mandate negotiators like us or some few individuals. Okay, I want to establish a hotline. First of all, negotiations start with listening. It doesn't start with talking. If I come to you and say, Babla, I have a problem, you will listen. The fact that you listen to the end, it gives me the ability that it mitigates the tension. The first aspect is listening. The second aspect is that you have to ask problem-solving questions. Ask the separatists or the non-state actors, as you call them, or the terrorists, as you call them. If you are in my position, how do you think we can handle this crisis? Look for a common ground. Where do we all agree? Yes, we disagree that I disagree that there should not be separation. You disagree that there should be separation. Where do we have a common ground? The common ground is who? The common man. The common ground is who? The children. They are the children. That's the common ground. Okay, how do you think we can start with what we agree than before we go to where we disagree? We start with, okay, maybe we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll give amnesty, we'll release those who have been arrested, maybe we'll release those whom you have kidnapped, maybe you tell us where the body of the DO, the former DO that was killed some time ago is, so that we can go and exhume, so that we can give a proper burial. That's how you establish a hotline. You should, but it's not easy. The first time you argue, sometimes in negotiation it's a fight. Especially internal conflict, you argue on the table, you may even be tempted to leave the table, you insult each other, but when that moment happens, know that it's normal. That's just a normal process.
The national chairman of the Social Democratic Front, Nick John Fundi, said in one of the editions of The Inside that the separatists should give in a bit, the government should give in a bit, and then a compromise is reached for a way out. What are some of the concessions that should be on the table of dialogue?
the number one concession and the final concession of Babla Jonathan is talking to each other first. When you talk to each other first, establish a hotline, then you can better understand what their needs are. Sometimes you may not see their needs. There was this story where a rich man went to a community and saw women carrying water from a distant position, and he came and constructed a borehole. And those women protested against him. He thought that he was solving the problem, because in that community, women don't go out. So the moment they go to carry water from far area, that's when they have that ability to feel they are free. So the man thought he was solving a problem, that he pitied these women who are carrying water from a far area by creating the borehole.
He was curtailing their freedoms.
Yes, but instead, he was not solving a problem, because he was creating a problem. These women now lacked where to go to. They could not leave the house. So before you even start talking about concessions, it starts with, let me hear you talk, and let you hear me talk, and then we'll move apart and come back again. We'll move apart, we'll argue, we'll query, we'll argue. For 5 days, 10 days, we have been arguing. A breakthrough will definitely come. And I want to say the government should employ the services of negotiators like some of us, Agobala and the rest. Those people whom you can say, these are neutralists. I mandate you to be talk to this, give us feedback how you can solve it. The non-state actors too should do that. Should come to should mandate some negotiators that, okay, this, if you want to negotiate with us, we are abroad. Talk to these people. Get to these people. These people are not making the decision, but they can talk with us and we can talk with you, so that we see how we can establish a hotline. The primary motive is that establish a channel of communication.
The two parties should leave their extreme ends and come to the center and listen to each other, according to Jarvis.
Yes.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Babla Jonathan.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today.